Hey yo, what it did, y'all? Let's get right into it. So, 2 videos ago, I talked about rare items on the ground being pointless. Some people agreed. In fact, a lot of people agreed. And then my last video, I talked about the No Magic Rare League that I've been playing in for the past like week and a half on and off or so. And in talking about that, I realized that I also want to talk about how I actually make items, and I want to make it a bit of a longer form discussion. So this video plus some other videos to talk about the actual specifics of how we make items, because the reality is that the game has long progressed past using on the floor items in any way, shape, or form besides being a crafted base. But even like fractured items, for example, are bases. The only things you really use as they drop are incredibly rare but well-rolled ID'd items, or you get something like a veiled item in your early progression that you're just like, this fixes so many problems right now, right? So how do we actually go about making good items? I want to start today with essences. I think essences are by far the most approachable way to make items because they remove a large part of the process, I think, that people get caught up on when they talk about crafting. And that's just, well, there is no thinking in using an essence at its base level. At its base level, you slap an essence on an item, it turns into a rare item with one guaranteed mod on it. And that means that we can do some things with it that, you know, craft a little bit more or whatever it may be. And so I want to talk a little bit about the theory behind essences at both the lower use cases as well as some of the high end use cases if you want to start to dig deeper into it. Now, before I get into all that usual stuff here, you feel this video is helpful or you think people need to know about it, like, comment, subscribe, free ways to support these videos. Also, if you do subscribe, consider turning those notifications on so you know when we post more here on the channel. Let's get into it. So, talking about essences, it's very important to start with, like I said earlier, the fact that they guarantee a mod. For example, if I slap a deafening essence of greed on my chest piece, it is going to have a ridiculously high amount of life on it. Guaranteed, no questions asked, right? There, nothing about it. There's nothing that can change about that outcome. Even if the item is too low of an item level to roll that modifier, right? That's another thing that's actually relevant for some crafts in the like middle stages of ways that you can use essences, using them to force on higher level modifiers in environments that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get them. Now, what does that actually mean? What it means is they're better chaos orbs. Like, don't think too hard about it. They are better chaos orbs. Like, your chaos orbs are better served if they are put in your map device to put a heist cache into your map, or you're spawning an expedition with it, you're doing a legion strat and you want to add another legion to it, whatever it may be. That's the better use of your chaos orbs. You need to use your chaos orbs because it takes 8 chaos to craft this prefix onto your weapon, right? Whatever it may be, those are all infinitely better uses of your chaos than sitting there chaos orbing your gear. At least the regularly equipable gear. When you get into things like jewels and clusters and whatnot, we start to get into a different territory, but that's because those straight up can't be essenced. I am 100% certain that if essences had effects on, say, like a rare jewel, you wouldn't bother chaos orbing those either, right? So at its base level, an essence is guaranteed stat. And there's a lot of good essences. Actually, most essences are better than they are worse, if that makes sense. It's very few essences that I feel like do not actually have a use case that most people would agree with. For example, Essence of Doubt is probably one of the worst essences. It's the accuracy and evasion rating essence, which flat evasion on gear is not actually all that valuable, even in the current state of the game where we are, you know, heavy trickster meta at the moment. You aren't really using evasion essences for that, right? Because you want the hybrid rolls instead to really lean into what makes trickster so strong. And if you're using a pure evasion piece, it's usually a unique such as Hiri's Ire or Fox's Fortune, etc. That might not be the right name of the chest, but that's what it used to be when people did it, right? So you're not actually playing to use that essence, and therefore it's like one of the bad ones. But pretty much every other essence has a real use case. And so what these are used for, the reason we farmed them, the reason it was such a big deal, like I mentioned in the previous video, when essences became farmable reliably starting in Ultimatum League, is that they guarantee stats on items that you want, right? At the very worst, if I'm playing, let's say, Lightning Arrow on a Deadeye, I can spam Essence of Wrath, Hatred, or Anger, all 3 of them, right? Because they're all flat attack damage on my bow. I could just spam those on my bow until it hits another flat and maybe another mod I want, right? Or I'm trying to craft a belt. I'm spamming hatred, wrath, anger to get a res I want, or envy for a different res, or spite, sorrow, rage for attributes that I want alongside other roles that I'm after. And that's the base level, right? You're using them as controlled chaos, much like how we use, Harvest Reforges. Pretty sure you're familiar with, say, like Harvest Reforging Chaos on a ring, but I'm going to cover that in much more detail in a different video, as Harvest has a lot more nuances and levels to it than an Essence does. Essence is, like I said, controlled chaos. And I'm going to continue repeating this, right? You're probably thinking, Jesus Christ, he said that so many times. Yes, because I want you to get the point. That's the important thing. And that's why they're so simple, why they're so approachable for everybody to use. They don't require you to have external knowledge. You don't even actually have to check if the piece in question could roll that mod normally, right? Like it tells you, you put it on this thing, you will get this stat. No questions about it, right? That's the beauty. Now, how do we use this? Like I mentioned, one, rolling for other mods that matter, right? Instead of chaos rolling and looking for flat lightning and flat cold, right? Or chaos rolling and looking for percent fizz and flat fizz, we are now just rolling, say, Essence of Contempt on our axe, looking for percent, because we know we've already got that high tier flat on there. If we get percent high flat or a high attack speed roll, then we can craft another roll on there and we're good to go. And then you get to the levels of this, which is now we can start to go further beyond, right? And this will get delve deeper into in other videos as I talk about the other aspects of crafting, because it's difficult to talk about crafting all in one video. Because if I tried to make a all-in-one video to talk about crafting, that video will be an hour and a half long or more, simply because there are so many nuances to all of the different types of crafting in the game and the way that they interact with one another. And it's more important really just to focus on the simple part here, which is that, again, essences give you the stat you want. You can roll for other stats in the process. Then you can start choosing your essence based on what other stats are easier, harder to roll. What other stats do you gain more, less value from in, quote, lesser forms, such as a bench craft or a veiled modifier version, which is a little bit less accessible now that veiled orbs tend to get really expensive really quickly, thanks to the accessibility change by GGG last patch. But you can start to look into these high level modifications. Now, all that said, allow me to give you a couple of meaningful examples here. Let's transition over to, Craft of Exile, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so now we're over here in Craft of Exile, and look at this axe, right? It's a white axe. So, I take an essence, again, like I said, Contempt Essence. Flat Fizz, pick your tier. I'm picking T1 just because I can. And I start spamming this on here. You'll notice, just as I spam through, every one of these has that Essence Tier 1 Flat Fizz roll. Bang, 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 bang. Doesn't matter what I get. And what I could be looking for example, if I'm crafting a high-end axe, this hybrid roll is pretty cool. It's a bit of a shit roll, but it's cool enough to think about, right? Maybe from here, if it's early enough in the league, I'm just like, oh, this is insane. Let me craft on, this is not the crafted section. Let me craft on the bench, percent fizz for chaos, because this one down here, the T1, is the one that costs exalt. But this axe is good enough to get me through quite a lot of content for now. I'll, come back and fix this up later, right? Or, again, we roll for more. Oh, I saw one that I actually would have stopped on, right? This axe is also one that, like, early in the league, I would also consider stopping on. I hit an attack speed roll. I have my essence mod. I have an open prefix, so I can craft on fizz, and we're good to go, right? These are good early game axes. And realistically, if you're watching this video, you probably already know how to do this. I'm mostly just to show how applicable this example is across the board, right? You can keep rolling. We're not going to sit here and roll forever, right? I'm just kind of showing you can keep doing this until you get something that you actually want, right? Whether it be I'm hunting for a higher, wow, that is an insane amount of flat. Like not looking for a specific modifier of any sort, or if you're looking for something very particular, like maybe you're looking until you hit high tier attack speed. Maybe you're looking until you hit high tier hybrid. I'm kind of mad that I haven't seen any rolls on here so far while I've just been clicking through as I talk to actually show you like one that's insane, right? So we're going to fudge the numbers a little bit here. And I'm going to pretend that I did in fact just hit like a really good hybrid roll to show you one of the methods of finishing these items. One of them, right? Some of the other methods are better shown on other items. So let's say I hit T5 hybrid. This is a pretty good point to be, this is like a very happy moment for your axe. In fact, actually, this even has attack speed on it. You probably just craft %fizz on this and send it. And this is a good enough axe. In fact, this is probably a bit of a high roll if I'm being honest, but it's here for you. You have this available to you. Let's say we didn't have this attack speed though. One option that you might see is something like prefixes cannot be changed, and then they veiled orb and hope for a prefix. That hit a prefix. Now we're hoping to unveil %fizz here, right? We unveil, it hits %fizz. You can check the numbers on this and you actually see that hitting a %fizz unveil is more likely than any other option. Not like you're, favored to hit it in the sense of the actual unveil, but more specifically, it is the most common modifier type due to the amount of %fizz rolls that are on weapons. So now we have triple fizz prefixes, and then we can just multi-mod our suffixes, or with this prefixes can't be changed in place, we could even harvest to, finish it out. Maybe it's harvest speed, whatever it may be, right? To finish this axe out. Now, some other ways that this gets used is if we talk about these besides weapons. I think the weapon uses of essences are the most frequently talked about, and I think that you should see some of the other places that you can put this in play. Let's look at, I mentioned belts earlier. This is a really good one that you should definitely know, especially if you're looking at playing in SSF or, in just early league trade again, right? Belt. I need a belt. I have to use a heavy belt because my attributes are in suffering mode right now, right? Like I'm poor on attributes. So I need a strength belt, and I need some dex on my belt actually. Because for whatever reason, my build needs dex. Remember when I told you that you can get modifiers that can't roll naturally on here? If you look at the modifiers on a belt, a belt, you'll notice it's only strength for attributes. Nothing else actually shows there. So we can use the essence to get dex in a place we usually can't get it. Same way you can use the bench to craft on that dex. And now we can roll until what usually is suitable suffixes, or when I'm profit crafting, for example, I'm actually rolling and looking for good life, as well as, like, for example, this is a belt that if I hit this belt on, say, day 2, day 3 of the league, I'm crafting and I'm selling them. Straight up, we go, and I look for good hyper resistance. So right now I see cold res, which means I'll usually craft on fire and lightning. And this is a sold belt. Someone will pay me for this belt. Guarantee it. And it will pay me a pretty good amount relative to the amount that the essences will cost me because it's early league and they're cheap, right? Like this belt is gone. Or realistically, that is a good belt for me. Look at that belt. Like that's 50 dex, 100 life. It's got the strength that I still need from being a heavy belt. It hit a res, and then I could craft the mod on it, whether it be the res that I just crafted on, or, my current character. In the private league, I've actually been thinking about this modifier here a lot as a crafted option, right? Like you have some options in what you can do. You could even craft the prefix if you thought the prefix was more fitting for your build. And, it's got an open slot if you're really feeling it. It's like, I'm a slam, and that slam sucks, but you can do that, right? So you're using the essence to target out things that you want / need that could maybe even not exist in that slot beforehand, so that you could make it happen. Let me show you one more example of this. And this one's a little bit of a more weird one, but it's one that I feel like people should know only because, some builds kind of need this level of optimization in their output. And that's talking about putting things on, say, like a ring. Specifically, rings have a very weak pool when it comes to essences for the most part. It's why you'll see people, like, if you ever think about trying to craft a ring, it usually involves the harvest bench instead. But I do want to point out one good use for essences. One, on rings, attributes, very strong. Again, dex, int, or strength, all are there. But a lot of the other modifiers here, you don't get res from anger or envy or anything, right? You do have some strong ones from the corrupted essences. We're not gonna talk about those, but the ones that I want to talk about here in particular, zeal for cast speed is actually pretty underrated if you don't have a lot of harvest juice to afford caster reforges on a ring and your build needs cast speed. Like, we're pretty happy just spamming on zeal until I hit one that I like, right? We're pretty happy with just doing that until I see the stat that I want. Or if you're playing if you're like me and you're a fan of chaos dot builds, I'm a big fan of like Bane of Blight of Contagion or playing a Bane character. And so this Envy one is actually pretty useful because you have so few damage stats on this build that you can afford to give up a ring suffix sometimes to just force look for damage and get that extra res or attribute suffix somewhere else instead. So that's another option. That's why I said this is a little bit of a weird one, because most people aren't really thinking about this one, especially the damage mods. And of course, on rings, if you're playing an attack build, there's also Contempt, Torment, what are the other ones? Suffering, and I missed the fire one somehow. It's Anguish. That give you flat to attacks, so you can just spam for flat fire, for example, until you hit a good roll there. Again, you're just rolling until you see a roll that you like. These are not rolls that I like. You know, you define whatever the roll you like is here. Like, I'm kind of okay with this roll, aside of the fact that it's doesn't actually have life on it. We'd have to, you know, craft the life on, and crafted life is kind of weak at the moment comparatively. That's the thing that you have to decide for yourself if you're willing to settle on, right? But like, this is a ring that in a lot of scenarios early on in the league, I'm not complaining about having. It has no reses though, and that's a real rough point early on. But maybe like day 2, day 3, you can afford this type of ring, you know, except maybe the damage isn't worth that much to you, right? But that's for you to figure out. That's for your build to tell you about. What I'm getting at when I talk about essences in this way is really just the idea that you can use them to fill all types of gaps in your build, whether it be squeezing out a little bit more damage or making a craft work that you just couldn't do previously. Now, I'm going to show you a bit of a higher end application of essences, because I think not only should you know this from the low level, but you should be able to think about this from the highest level as well. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to use a ring again just to make this probably the simplest it can be, because I have done this craft a number of times before, but know that this works for a number of other things in principle. And you've probably even seen it if you know, seen any of my previous crafting videos where I talked about fractured mods on items that they did involve actually essencing them until I saw something I want. But let's just say I've got this really nice, can I get a better roll please than that? Okay, there we go. Do not divine that. You can't divine a fractured mod, by the way, if you actually get one. I'm just doing that because the number really bothered me. But we make this rare, and now let's essence spam it. And we're looking just for good suffixes at this point, right? We have a really good prefix. So now we want to roll until we get good suffixes. And this is so good, actually, that I want crit multi, which you can't get crit multi on a ring unless it's a warlord ring, by the way. So this is another one of those modifiers that you can't get otherwise. Now I'm just rolling here until I see suffixes that I like, right? And, you know, you can roll through. Oh, I think I saw one that I would have actually probably settled on. Well, this is definitely a settle because our prefixes are full and we can't even, like, our suffixes aren't perfect. But let's just say, for example, for a moment, we go for an annul, we annul off. Now I go suffixes can't be changed. And now we can harvest craft chaos to guarantee chaos res on here, right? Like, again, very important step, but why is, oh, reforge chaos, why is it not working? Reforge chaos, we hit guaranteed chaos res. Wow, this T2. Look at this ring. This ring on its own is already a really strong ring, right? Like, you would probably equip this on a number of your current characters, right? Assuming you need the crit multi, right? So this is a very strong ring. And then we can still do more to this, right? We can still, suffixes can't be changed and go further, right? Which is usually suffixes cannot be changed, reforge attack, or suffixes cannot be changed, and what would actually be a veiled orb in my case, slap on a prefix that I like. Unfortunately, oh, you know, I'm dumb and didn't actually block this before I did it, but whatever. And then you can finish the item off with something that looks like this and have an incredible item. And this is made possible through, again, it does use a fractured item to make it easier, but you don't need the fractured prefix. You could have just, you know, rolled for the life after getting your suffixes right. The principle that I'm showing here with this craft is more specifically the fact that you can get the suffixes right and target one of them through your essences. You're rolling one suffix and looking for 2 more to go with it, right? That's what it's more about. Talking about how, again, some high level concepts. And you'll notice, like I said earlier, would have been too hard to make one catch-all video for crafting because the mechanics cross over with each other really nicely, and you're just kind of going to have to stay tuned for the remainder of these videos that I'm going to make as I talk about the various mechanics and their ways that they can be used. This is definitely one of the simpler ones, and it's actually why I dragged this one out a little bit, mostly because I wanted to show some more of this. It's a little harder for me to show some of the other things that can be done in crafting as we get to the other mechanics, because it'll start to get really long in terms of time period taken per video. For your eyes, really. I don't mind making longer videos, but I know that as a viewer, I don't love watching longer videos. I don't know how you guys feel about longer videos. If you guys want these videos to be longer, by the way, let me know. I will gladly like pad these out with more information in them in the future if that's something you want. And on a similar note to that, or well, in that vein, since we're at that point, that kind of does wrap up what I wanted to show here. It's just, again, showing you that essences are, again, controlled chaos orbs. Repeat it with me: controlled chaos orbs. And the fact that they are controlled chaos orbs gives us a lot of power in the way that we utilize them as the either start and end of our early game crafts, or the major starting point of a lot of high-end crafting endeavors in this game. All right, all that said, thank you guys for watching. Again, if you find this particularly useful, like, comment, subscribe, share, all that really just, you know, boost the numbers so people actually do see this, because I want people to have this information, right? That's why we make these videos. It's just to get information out to you guys, as well as, you know, if you want to connect with me more outside of here, I do have a Twitch and a Discord in the description down below that you can come find me at. You know, comment down below if you have any questions about essences that we're not, you know, answering here, because I didn't go super in depth or anything, or procedures that you want to double check by me, ideas for future videos in this line of topic. And otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Peace.